Ladies and gentlemen, update time. And it's not this. We're actually skipping this window, which is probably not a bad thing to do because I don't know anyone who's going to have materials for this right now. Man, leveling characters is one of the most expensive things in this game. It's wild. But we're also skipping Hollow Purple's rerun. Not the end of the world, really. But what we're getting is this story event and this pickup gacha. So, a story event gets you this recollection bit. There it is. When the command skill is activated, all allies damage received down by 10 or 15%. And then when the skill is activated, if the target is in a debuffed state, decreases all debuffed enemies damage dealt by 15% up to one time during the turn. Actually, not too bad, to be honest with you. Like, it's going to be quite decent for a tank type character or a character that does a lot of debuffing. And debuffs are generally really quite good, like your Blue Ghetto or Domain Megami. Don't put this on Domain Megami, but you know what I mean. The debuffs, generally pretty good. So I'm happy with it. But let's be real. This guy, this man right here, this Yaga he's the big one. And I'm probably going to be summoning for him. Other people may not. He's got a relatively low ult cost, which is good. Just check the other Yaga. What's the other Yaga? Like, off the top of my head, I don't have it. Yaga is larger. That's what I thought. Because this one always takes a bit longer, because I think this new one is the same as Nanami, right? This one? I don't know what his tag is. Here we go, got it. Thought it was that one. Yep, it's the same as the SR red Nanami that everyone spams in everything because he's godlike. So, comparatively short ult gauge, which is really, really good. And his actual kit is really quite strong. It's kind of decent, and then his passive skill is wild. So, skill 1, 180% melee taijutsu, and then decrease critical hit resistance by 15% at level 10, 10% at level 1, so that's what scales there. Not a huge deal, to be honest. A lot of characters have a similar thing. Go Tsukamoto is at level 1, 120 to 30%, and 30% Jujutsu to the selected enemies, and then decreases their taijutsu damage by 35%. Tsukamoto ignores darkness status, so the little puppet dudes ignore darkness, which is actually kind of useful because there's a couple of fights in Tower that have darkness on. They're very annoying. So that has its bonuses. Then your turn, Mokyu Budopan. This is a pretty good skill, to be honest. 20 cursed energy, so you'll probably want some sort of cursed energy. Regen, be it recollection beard or another character, or just save this for a few turns until the nuke turn. So, for 3 turns at level 10, you do some taijutsu damage, and then you inflict darkness status on the enemy. Level 1, it's a 65% chance, and then it scales up by about 3.6% each time, capping out at 97% or 98%, and increases their taijutsu and jujutsu damage received by 30.2% 3 turns, which is quite nice because you can do it for 2 turns, and then on the final turn you can hit them with another one, count for the 3, then ult the nuke. But also for yellows, there's an additional 16.5 at max rank, or 10 to all of that, so you're actually getting nearly 47% damage received for yellows. Quite strong. I have the other Yaga. Yeah. Because he's buffs. He's all buffs. It's called Battle, I believe. Nope. The original one. Is this one? Yeah. His original buff is 45% to all allies. And Let's Go Kathy is increases selected damage taken by 47%. So it's about the same as this one, actually, which is good. Because the main thing here is his passive skill. At the start of each turn, all allies taijutsu damage 46%, all allies jujutsu damage 46%. That is this guy's skill 2, basically. So this guy has his skill 2 just on a passive. Now this only lasts one turn, right? But then you've got pretty much the same passive, especially for yellows, on this skill here. So certainly worthwhile if you're going into a single target nuking situation. It doesn't help if you're in multi-target because you can only get it on one selected enemy. But it is definitely worth considering. Then the ultimate deals range damage equal to 1,200% basically taijutsu and 360 jujutsu, all enemies. Increase all enemies taijutsu damage received by 51.6%, and jujutsu the same. That's effective for yellow types attacks and it lasts 4 turns, so that's really strong. All allies damage up by 30% for 4 turns. Again, really, really strong. So you can use this a couple of times, have this ticking on in the background, and then blast this. Because also, the combo effect is allies own a combo. I apologize. Increases damage done by himself and combo allies by 15% for 3 turns, and fills allies, non-combo allies' ultimate skill gauge by 110. So it's actually pretty good. Get an ult gauge increase as well, which is really quite strong. So Yaga is definitely one of the strongest supports in the game, I would say. Sort of difficult to recommend summoning for him for most people at this point, simply because the game is moving very, very quickly and we're probably like, what, 2-3 months away from what's technically the anniversary in JP. But, you know, it's up to you. I could definitely see a use case, especially if you've got a well duped out Nobara or Yellow Gojo or something like that. Could certainly see it. The other character on the banner, there is an SR character that's quite good. Yoshinobu Gakuganji, I think is how it would be pronounced. Relatively high ultimate gauge, but that's not too bad. Most of his stuff works around, call it a stance, but they call it states here. So in his base state, 80% Jujutsu damage, and then decreases selected enemies' Jujutsu damage by 10%. If alternate tuning is up, it's 100% Jujutsu damage and increases the selected enemy's damage received by 10%. So basically, it's they're both debuffs, but either make them do less damage or take more damage. Tuning does literally this. Increases own Jujutsu damage by 10% and activates or deactivates alternate tuning. At level 10, it's 15%. You can probably keep it at level 1, to be honest with you. Don't need to worry too much about that. Do these scale? Yes, they do. These go up to 15%. So, you know, you can keep it at level 5 or level 6, and you're going to get practically the same use. This is probably one of the bigger ones. So, if alternate tuning is not active, it's damage to all enemies and increases all enemies' taijutsu and jujutsu damage received by 25%, scaling to just under 40%. So that's a nice little damage taken increase. If alternative tuning is active, changes the skill effect to deals 100% jujutsu damage to all enemies, inflicts them with confusion, and stuns them. At level 10, the confusion is 50%. The stun is 131%. Remember, a lot of enemies, especially in tower or big bosses, have some degree of resistance to both of these. So you're either going to be wanting to Probably going to be wanting to stack this one unless you absolutely have to take the chance. If you're taking the risk, totally get it. One of those things I've done before. Red Toge has saved me a lot in the early days. Ultimate Cursed Energy Melody. So his ult at max rank, just over 700% damage to all enemies, decreases their damage dealt by 50%. If alternate tuning is active, changes the skill effect to 960% Jujutsu and decreases all enemies' ult count by 1. Both of which are really useful. So, you know, choose what's best for you, but remember your entire turn is going to be taken up by activating or deactivating alternate tuning. So it's definitely something you're going to need to be aware of, because you can farm up your ult gauge with this, for instance, make them take a bunch of damage received, but then you have to take a turn off if you want to use the alternate tuning side of this. So it's definitely going to be something you'll need to manage. Definitely an active character rather than one that you'd be wanting to play on auto, but definitely has his place potentially. I'll be curious to give him a try. And his combo ult is the same as Yaga's, 15% damage, and fills non-combo allies' ult gauge. Other than that, he's a relatively complicated character for an SR, if I'm being totally honest. And he's definitely very cursed energy or curse or Jujutsu based, curse technique based. But at least you'll be able to have a solid 40 starting curse energy if you can feed him a couple of SR dupes. So that has its benefits for sure. Let me know what you're going to be doing. Oh, also this other recollection bit, this is the gacha one. Actually really quite good. When the command skill is activated, decreases own damage received by 60 or 70%. 3 turns, 1 time. So 50% uptime with the 6 turn cooldown. And at the start of the turn, if your own HP is 70% or below, all allies taijutsu and jujutsu up by 20% 1 time during battle. So hopefully it happens on like turn 2 or 3, or between 1 to 4 turns before you want to use the ult, before you're nuking. If you can line that up, it's actually a pretty good supporting recollection bit, if I'm being completely honest. So let me know what you guys are going to do. I'm going to be summoning, annoyingly. The game could just chill for a moment, that'd be great, but clearly not. And if we could get those 6k cubes, freaking Billy, that'd be great as well. But I will see you guys later. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.